silence inside the mind is incredible. I do really appreciate your time. I do really appreciate your energy. When I come into this space, I really look to do my best and to stay as clear as possible. I will tell you, that's the beauty of meditation, because there seems to always be a challenge to accomplish that or achieve that. If you make it a challenge, there are no enemies, there are only opportunities. So this is about the gatekeepers of the financial world. That is the headline today. And this is going to be an awesome time for, us to really just glide through a few different levels of consciousness, the world experience and how things work. And I really have actually the perfect way of coming into this today, because I can really let you see that you would actually choose two things if you really understood how those two things make up the fabric of reality itself. So if there was a true red pill, blue pill, it would be choice or no choice. So I don't care what kind of master system, teaching, instruction, whatever, all of whatever is being discussed is going to lead right into just these two pipelines of choice and no choice. Why? Okay, well, let's just look at it as its most simplest but super complex way of being. No choice is an autonomous system in itself. It's like a hive where everything that's dialed in is sent across the rest of the hive, and the hive responds in sync, completely synchronized. And when you could think about this system, you can see why that would be appealing for certain ideals, like organization, no crime, nothing that would annoy someone, even though I think you would just probably have to remove everything from the world. And I think that would actually be the point, because when you start stepping into choice, now what you're saying is, okay, there's only two energies. There's no choice or choice. And if we open up choice, you can't open up choice to no choice. Meaning you can't open up sovereignty to rules to sovereignty. Here's what you can like. Here's what you can like. So I wanted to start off today just on that level playing field of saying that if you like choice, then now that's when the reality begins. That's when all you see, all you love, and all you complain about comes into play. Because when you enter in the realm of choice and sovereignty, this means that everybody can do what they want or what they feel. And so it's just very important to remember, because some are actually insisting that they want to go back to the autonomous system. They want to go back to the instinctual hive mind system, where everything is one centralized core. That's what happens at times when you're even fighting when people were given choice and then what they choose to do with that choice. You start fighting whatever is the results of the choices that they are making. So it's kind of put us in a conundrum, because in this space that we're all exercising our choice, especially if the dream world is excluded, where it's exactly where you would have all the choices that you want. You can do what you want in your dream world. But if you come into the real world or a collective reality and then try to bring in choice, you'll find that choice is actually embedded with some limitations because of the governance of this reality. So you have to still remember the difference between the two, because I believe personally we've come from both spaces. I believe there's things within us right now that still run autonomously, like you breathing, the real instincts, right? And then I also know that you've been exercising quite a bit of choice in the matrix too. And so because that's the whole root to all things, and you can see why both of them would happen even by you have to be willing then to accept what comes next. When they talk about Pandora's box is only a box of choices. More importantly, it's a realm that choices can even be made. So you can imagine, especially with anything that has maybe been on an autonomous level for a while, it may be trying to find realms that are just free realms. Do what you want. So I want to enter again into this ancient knowledge like that today, so that way we have the ability to not get polarized. Because, man, I mean, I'm a passionate being. I even found myself getting off track the other day, meaning getting off balance. And I just was like getting polarized because I just wanted to obliviate all the bad guys, just bloody their faces. It's something about it. It's like when you just hear about the atrocities, from where I'm from, you just kind of well up and you just want to vanquish. And, and I get, how that may not solve things all the time. And, and that we're searching for a better level of how to deal with the transmutations going on inside of the matrix. We're also coming to identify even who we are and where we're at. Like when you're in certain realms, how those dimensions function. That's like when you come into this dimension, if you understand certain skills here, it'll work to your advantage. And so, as I still said, though, there's a difference between the autonomous and instinctual. I'll say it again, autonomous and instinctual versus the unique and the divergent. When you bring in uniqueness, you take a binary system and you bring it into a trinary framework at minimum. You birth it into a new life. So this becomes very interesting to me because this uniqueness allows you to escape the binary switching. Let's see what's going on with my sound here. The binary switching of reality as it wants to take you into the yin-yang motion and flow of how it creates things or how it's utilizing its energy now. And I wanted to go into the real history, her story of our advent into this, so that way we can properly identify these gatekeepers of the financial world and what finances is. In order for us to be brave, to be adepts, adults, to truly enact our courageousness in this time, to start the process of not only accepting what we have created and what we have wrought into this point, but also how we are equally as empowered to bring the system continuously into balance and to do our best to restore it to its original state. So some people say, well, yeah, we're gone on the divergent path and now, things will never be the same again. Actually, no, there's custodians in the system. And these custodians or guardians or gardeners in the system always work to restore it to its original state. It's like the ones who maintain the temple, right? Now, they have temples that still look the same way that they looked for thousands of years now. And only even, they even got another little remake on some of those temples. So they're constantly maintaining these temples to let them vibrate and resonate what they at least were able to vibrate and resonate in their original state. And thinking of states, because I mentioned before, states are like, we call the United States, we call it one of the states is Wyoming, one of the states, is Chicago. And it's interesting to me, though, how it becomes hard to see like states like New York are so rich in astral energy because there have been hundreds of millions of people that have trafficked the space, walked across the same space. And even in that one little space that you may be saying is a cube of New York, if you may, there's so many energies that have crossed into that space. And they also say because of the way that this sphere consciousness, we got to watch out for the flat earthers. They ready, they on attack. The sphere consciousness is projecting, it's rolling. It's like it's a torus on one dimension, and it's a spheroid on another dimension. and it's a tetrahedron on another dimension, and it's taking on these different shapes. And what we have the opportunity to do in all of this, though, because if you can imagine, if you're inside of something like that, you may sometimes struggle for your bearing. You may struggle for your true north. That the day has now come that we are able to rapidly begin the progress towards our sovereignty and and beyond, and the removal of ourselves from the death system. And these are just some of the things that the Secret Energy Foundation and Creator Tao is up to, because we've decided to continuously align in the awareness that we are everything. And whatever distortions that we find in something, it is now left us the responsibility to actually correct that distortion. So I wanted to start off first by explaining that obviously before a physical reality, there is what you would call a reality that is made out of light. In this case, like gases, like xenon and argon and some of the higher gases in the atmosphere. And that even what you're calling a cloud in this reality, like when you say the cloud, that's why in computers they say that the cloud is also where information is stored, because the actual physical clouds in our reality, whether you can see the clouds or not, are actually containing the consciousness and the mindset of all of the world and its dreamers. And its dreamers, that we're all feeding into the cloud, our consciousness, our dreams. And then also it's all like a water flow. So it's washing and entangling and circling and flowing into itself. And that's why, it's really good to be water purifiers on the realm. Yes, there's a certain point where you have to take a responsibility to say, all right, well, I'm going to maintain this because it looks so nice and I had such a great experience. And I guess you would need to have a great experience first, or you would need to have something that looks nice, something that means something to you. Like, it's like your own house. If your own house doesn't mean anything to you, then it's a mess. It's like, it's not organized. It doesn't resonate what you are. But the moment that you make it yours, you start putting the things around it and removing the things that actually are not in harmonics with it. So that's why I said it's still and always has been up to us to decide how to carve our own corner out of the galaxy infinitely, because only you know what you prefer. In this process of escaping the binary levels and systems that are hive-like, we've now come into exploring our uniqueness, and others have too. Now we're all beginning to create in the same space, and we're forgetting about the spaces that we also have to create in our consciousness, which have infinite room and infinite possibility. And even when you get an opportunity to use the infinite possibility of your consciousness, you're actually escaping the distortions. Like all the distortion, when you can see better things, all the horrible things, they begin to go away. Like that's a big part of therapy. It's taking a person out of that crazy environment and then putting them in something that's beautiful. But who has the opportunity to do that? Where are those spaces being created? And, this is what's in our roadmap. This is what we're endeavoring to do. And you can already see the flux or the blowback or the repercussions of having to take on such a responsibility. It's called the penalty of leadership, where everyone gets a chance to sit back and judge what you're doing. So I'm here to tell you to keep going forward with what you understand to be your own truth. And it will always be synchronistically responding to you and showing you when you're on the path. And it'll show you when you're coming off the path. Not others all the time. People are, and because they waver, they go back and forth. Like, think about the reality again, it's binary nature. Is to have people going back and forth. We have so many tools here in the reality. Every time, like when we first picked up the shovel, somebody could have said, hey, you should dig that with your hands. When we pick up some of the most crudest tools like compasses, somebody for sure said, hey, you should just know the stars. And I can't say they weren't right. But I also can't say that life is a space where you learn everything all at once. Life itself is a multidisciplinary. It requires you even to study things that you may have problems with to discover what is the problem that you're having with yourself. Because when you come to terms with what it is, this thing we call life, we understand that it is us. It's everything. So in all these expressions, the physical aspect of the reality beginning is what we're going to address today, because we're going to be talking about gatekeepers of the financial world. You have to originally know that there was no commerce. Commerce is very specific. It is a field of battle. It is a field of winners and losers. Those who will escape with the booty or the gems, the resources, and those that will maybe leave with their lives, maybe not. Maybe they will be killed as dead on the battlefield and live on as debt slaves. That's commerce. That's why I was saying before that we have land because land is stable. If you can live on the ocean, you have to be built different to live in where there's a constant sway and movement and a change that can't be controlled. And to even be able to learn how to navigate that, you have to have strong purpose. You have to see that there needs to be new territory for your village. You have to see that there's a need for more resources for your village. You have to see that there's a need for more experience and more exposure for your village. Because when you step into the ocean, you're stepping into a perilous journey. One that moves with the stars and moves with power still too deep for man to understand. That's why we have daylight. We have, at least for half of the day, this thing that comes through and pushes back all the darkness. It moves through and sprays out nutrients, awareness, remembrance, hope through the entire reality. And some say, well, yeah, the darkness does that too. I agree, but not as much. If you were dark for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and as the darkness begins to wear in on you and the depression begins to wear in on you, hopefully you are ready to deal with that inner self and that dark night. Hopefully you know how to light the light within. So we can say what we want to say, but that sun is super symbolic for something that allows us to keep driving, keep projecting. So originally, again, there was no commerce because there was no war. The space was so vast, it was overabundant. The level of creativity was immense. We were dealing with unhindered beings escaping the hive and beginning to think on their own and create as they wish. And that power in itself, for better or for worse, is our words. It's the tones and the vibrations that are uttered out of our mouths, because anything inside is an intonation. It stays in your internal projector and is a part of your astral and your dream. It does not enter into this space. It's only when it's projected. Now, of course, your thoughts are a projection, but the carrier of thought is only the clouds. Thank you. The carrier of thought is only the clouds. How do you make it manifest? Sound. Okay, sound. That's like, they say a sound vibration, a sound foundation. So the sound comes and boom, okay, here we are. Now we're making choices. Now we're using words. So again, now this abundant land at a certain stage, and you can read this in a lot of the ancient Hindu texts. I have a Dr. Vinyasan, Sri Vinyasan, I believe his name is. That's definitely someone that I feel, Dr. Vinny, I believe, Dr. Vinny Sri Vinyasan, right? Somebody may be able to share the links to all the deeper explorations of just where these ancient cultures originally came from and what their life was like and how they started in places like Samaria, or you're calling Samaria today, and Kemet. And, really the level of knowledge and wisdom that some of them had, like all of the deeper levels of the knowledge and wisdom that was built within the language. And really the depth of how the Nagas became the bridge themselves between what we now call the mammalian / reptilian human being. For those who want to argue that, why would you have a reptilian brain and a reptilian or mammalian brain, and then even an aerial brain, if you weren't once or somehow infused with those energies? But if anyone knows anything about how you would graft something, you can't take species that don't have certain similitudes and mix them together. So you need to bridge with other species until eventually you get to something that would be able to harmonize those two wavelengths. And as I said before, the cat is the symbol of that, because the cat has snake eyes, but a mammal's body. And that is the height of the knowledge to let everyone know that two conflictive forces can be brought together in the same vessel and produce prana, as you would hear with the purring. So when we start talking about the powers and the abilities here on earth, the magnitude is really just based on the imagination. There can be no limits. And only if the imaginations are limited will scarcity be introduced. And so you would have to see that shift inside of the consciousness before you would actually see it in the physical reality. But instead of trying to hold both narratives, which would be quite tough when trying to speak on gatekeepers of the financial world, I'll have to dive into the physical reality and then say, so from the time that the land was completely abundant, where there was no working, there was a shift into where there was now a need for a variety of resources. And I would always assume this has to do with the difference between wants and needs if we're in the physical plane, because in your territory or your village, if you may, you would have pretty much, if it was able to sustain a village from the beginning, unless you were nomadic or moved, everything that you need to take care of yourself. That's common sense. Okay, so this idea of like a nomadic man is also very interesting in itself, because it really just kind of hints on maybe even another life form that doesn't have a native home, that must move from one space to the next, because other than that, all have their own domain, their own phylum. And the flora and the fauna within that domain is generally in excess that it allows them to sustain themselves, or else you don't get to 1,000 years later. Okay, so that's just like common sense. Everybody would just die in that territory because it didn't have the resources. So this is where, we begin to start bridging wants and needs. And since we're a creative species, meaning that we're coming from a space of infinite, wants probably are all there is. Because humans don't even need what we call air and oxygen when you really are unlocked. Humans don't have any dependencies on the 5 elements when they're unlocked. Okay, so just understand that there's a process that's actually going on here with still the acceptance of our own growth through what we're capable of doing. Like, you don't remember the time that you're all powerful. You're growing into that by going through the experiences of everything. So you at times can't even knock the system in itself, because it constantly introduces the same integers. There's nothing really creative about the system. It's a replica. But as I mentioned the other day, replicas are used when you need training wheels to actually understand the totality of generally what is being replicated. If you're just all of a sudden awake to your true self and what you really are, from going from the stage of consciousness where we've been at, which is seed-like, it could be quite disturbing. And we've actually watched some of our brothers and sisters fall in this battle to their mind. The true testament. Do you have the balls to deal with what happens when you start taking deep levels of occult knowledge, symbolism, occult aesthetics, and practices into your life? And you start to activate more and more into the awareness of what you truly are. Like, can you keep it all together? So what I'm saying here is that on every part of real life, adept life, mature life, there's always this warning there. You can count on that every time you're going to go into something powerful, there's going to be always warnings around it. And in many ways, those warnings are actually very well justified. If you give something so powerful to somebody so ignorant, I still will say, yeah, they will do some damage, but they will still never be able to harness the true potential of what it actually is. So what we're here to do is we're also here to balance out, like I said, many of these powers, these symbols, these technologies, to actually continue to assist humanity in their process of the awareness of who they truly are. So I wanted to talk about then, so the next day, since again, this is then about want. That's why I say do what you want is the whole of the law. That they didn't make that up. That was the original projection for this particular matrix. That choice was going to be introduced here. So now, as you can see that as wants, you can imagine within tribes that some goods became over time more valuable than others. You see it around you everywhere, that there's a sliding scale between the value of things. So what's valuable to one person sometimes is not valuable to another person, or what's valuable to one tribe may not be valuable to another tribe. It depends on where your values are. So you can imagine how in the future, if something can control your values, it means that everything would be centralized to the systems that could provide you those values. But if you were diversified and everyone had a very unique value, it could only be really supplied either by oneself or someone adjacent to oneself. And that's where the whole trading process began, of one value for another. And while y'all are thinking tomatoes and carrots, like animals maybe, we're talking about DNA. On the highest levels, it's about high-grade DNA, because DNA contains everything. The more you wreck your experience, the more it's written on your own DNA. And then when you load up again, now you got to load up with the wreck experience. The more you defrag, you see what I mean, and compress, open up more space, then that's how your DNA is. And, you know, I can't tell you how many galaxies use DNA and how far DNA really is throughout the entire existence. I would only say that I wouldn't need to, because since it runs through everything, it already gives you the awareness that, well, through this DNA chain, because I'm connected, because I have this legacy and this lineage that's as sure as the mathematics around it, that I connect to all this stuff if I know that, though. Not believe. Belief is not enough. Belief only gets you so far. You know what belief is? Belief is when the moment that somebody sees something that they don't approve of and they believed in you at first, they're gone. That's what belief is. Belief is so shaky. People go through so many beliefs in 1 month because it's water. There's 70% water. So it's like it encourages the binary nature, because the binary nature, again, is the hive transmission. It just says, okay, you're going to be over here now. You're going to polarize over here now. You're going to believe this now. You're going to think this is okay now. And it's because something is trying to hoard the consensus of what you think is valuable. Okay? Like, to somebody who doesn't have any water, water is the most valuable thing to them. Right? So it's just really about understanding powers and elements and what really drives you. And that's why we also talk about, when you know your element, fire, earth, wind, water, whatever you feel comfortable in, heat, and you invest in your element, putting yourself in that space or putting that around you, you're investing right into yourself, because you're going to get a consistent reflection and a consistent boost of energy from that element, until eventually you activate all the elements, until eventually you actually don't need elements. That's like the transference of when the vehicle itself starts to become completely sustainable. But right now, this is training wheels. Our ancestors put together a system which is actually encompassing the sun. I'm tired of hearing arguments from people. I don't even want to completely disclose it at this point. But if you didn't look at the sun with your third eye and actually realize how it's spraying out most of the reality that people are saying that they're in, you wouldn't realize why it's really a central processor in itself. That our ancestors said it was Ra, they were right. Whatever Ra is, I'm sure it's beyond most comprehensions, because it was trained on a data set of a real reality, not a fake Disney world. So, as I said, for all of us, regardless of whatever you do in your life, you can't expect that you're not being watched. I mean, again, this is not about good or bad. This is about your own personal integrity. This is about your own culture, your own build. So you're here to build yourself, to upgrade yourself. But you can't imagine, you can't slink away from or think that the whole system is not monitored. As they call the lizards, right? The monitor, big old monitor lizard, just watching everything for the ancestors, putting you through trials again to see. So what would you do? Those are the wisest men. They sit back before when you ask them a question, they say, so what would you do? Let me understand the being that I'm dealing with. It doesn't really even matter what I would do. It's what will you do? So again, in this process, we find tribes begin to barter and trade. Beautiful women. Women were generally the first. Once we left her story, where the oracles were giving direct transmissions, as a computer system oracle also, giving direct transmission from the totality to what needs to be done next. Once that system was severed, then it went directly into this value system where numbers, or ma'at, begins to be used to count money. And that's why, and count livestock. That's why the Sumerians, at a certain context, became the first civilization, because they were the first one to be using numbers, which are way more powerful, to actually, for mundane reasons, things about earth. Mundane means Monday. Things about earth rather than the heavens and light and gas and the powers that numbers really contain, which now becomes our chemistry and all of our systems of replication, basically. Because that's why I say there's nothing new under the sun, my friend. You have to get beyond the sun. It's a portal. You see it as particularly a ball moving through the sky. And what it actually is an opening into the next space. As the oculus moves across this projection. That's just the level of power we're talking about. But you've been seeing that in the movies, but you're like, well, shoot, that's just in the movie. If it's in the mind, it's already projected. Especially, again, when you're in the wake, is at the wake behind the sun. Meaning the sun's moving and you're kind of like just getting the reality as it's moving through. Anybody who's actually watched it with a third eye sees everything spins around it, mainly the clouds. And as it's going, it's like it's going somewhere and everything is going with it and you're just getting left behind into the land of darkness. That's what it looks like with a third eye. Without a third eye, it just looks like it's kind of coming up and then going down and then going underneath something. It's a dimensional thing. That's why I said the New World Order started with the idea of how the world appears in people's minds. And then that world that appears is the dimension they're on. And there are many dimensions. And at times you cannot control certain things from certain dimensions. That's celestial mechanics. You have to know how to tug the string of the corresponding thing from one dimension to the next. And most of the time, they don't even look the same. So you have to have this discernment of knowing, like when the dream is trying to teach you, it shows you characters that you know in real life, someone that you don't even like. And then you be over here like, what the hell's going on? The dream is like, well, these are the only characters that you're giving me to try to explain such a complex level of awareness of what you really are. But the drills run every night. That's what the darkness is. The darkness will run the drill every night. The darkness is the deep. It's the ocean. It's like, well, yeah, there's the sun. The sun gone. We're like, yo, sun, bye. Right, me. Where are we saying? And then there you look at the water, and the water, the water begins to rise. That's also what shifts in our body the time that we're about to now go into the dream world, unless we're fighting it. You ought to be like, unless we got one of them, what do you call them, grave night shifts, graveyard shifts. You ought to be where, you're up late at night. Or if you're in a monastery with the monks and, you're in that sonambular state where you can't go into sleep. Like the real travelers of the matrix, where when you start falling in what you call sleep, the master hits you with a bamboo rod, wow, across the back. Like, yo, don't go into sleep. You got to maintain the fortress because there's other stuff going on. And there's consciousnesses and nations and galaxies, if you may, that have been trained on other levels of how to maintain their reality and what they want. And that's what I'm saying. So you just have to figure out what you want and how you want to live. That's why if you adapt somebody else's culture and that's not really what you want to live and you're just in there in a straitjacket, you haven't done one better for yourself just because you thought that culture somehow found heaven. Heaven's in the consciousness. It's where you want to live. So let me explain this. So as we keep going, again, this does eventually get to the financial gatekeepers of the world, because as you see that when one thing starts becoming worth more than another, and some things become more valuable than others, it creates a wealth class, right? Classification actually slides from there. Classification is whoever's the most valuable is the most coveted. And so really that awareness was what was trying to be controlled. That's why you call it royalty, prestige, all this kind of stuff, because these are words that attempt to create a construct for something that is deemed to be higher, a higher value. So if you ever wanted to know the origins of your Illuminati and your pyramid systems, et cetera, that is one of them. Another one is that generally whoever was at the top had a direct connection between this space and the other side of things, right? What you call the realm of the dead now, the astral plane. And they were the bridge or the Eve angel. And as I mentioned earlier, the oracle was the original Mamiwata priestess oracles were the bridges between the hyperdimensional mainframe and the edicts of what would take place on Earth. And they actually governed all of the currents. All of the currency they governed, and their seat was where the Vatican is today, the number one place of the prophecies of the oracle. It's something about the place. So if you're sitting on top of the place, it's like you're sitting right on top of the portal or the gateway. And when information comes across, it doesn't matter who's there to receive it. The information is going to transmit anyway because it's a vibration, and it transmits into this reality like a propulsion of the energy of what's next. And if you're there to receive it and you have mediums there, then they can receive it like antennas. And then they prophesy. They tell the things that, because they know the future, are going to get anyone who knows about them more wealthy. Because it's for multiple reasons, right? Why would they be more wealthy if you know the future? Because you know when a storm is coming, you know when markets are going to go up, markets are going to go down, you know when earthquakes are going to happen, you know when anything is going to happen. And that's also what your dream gives you. The dream has direct access to a space. And in this space, you can see tomorrow. It's a little bit more. Just keep my fuel coming here. It's a small container. I'm going to take a break here for just a minute just to refresh real quick. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to really keep going in on this and deliver this. But I love the flow here. But it's just, we got to take a moment to just digest again that. So you're looking at a natural progression here where you may want to blame somebody for this and what it eventually becomes. And what I'm telling you is that the oracles were responsible predominantly for the most important thing inside of the construct, which was predominantly astral or oceanic, right? We call the ocean space because the ocean is the astral plane. It's the deep. So before land is what I'm saying. And the rulers of the land was the rulers of the deep, primarily centralized in the oracle. And what we can understand, if we understand what is that salt water in the ocean and what is the ocean water, especially as you go into the deep, you realize that it is the byproduct of souls. Like souls are water. More importantly, that salted water, because there's a salt of the earth, because it can generate this soul, which was seen as a fish. And so the management of the souls and the transmigrations of the souls was all conducted by the oracle system, okay? And that's the system that was taken offline and then, taken offline in the context that the earth stopped using that and started using a replica of that system, which was created by the priests of Amun themselves. They booted up a replica mainframe, which you would call an AI, and began to host from that mainframe in order to not be connected to the original hive mind matriarchal structure. Okay. And it's been taking cats 20,000 years to be able to articulate that, because we haven't even been in a stage to where when you understand data sets, at minimum, every human contributes data into the whole, all there is. So that is their value. So you're already valuable to the system because you contribute data. So the replicas of that is like what you see now with the computers, because you put something in Facebook, there's a value to that data. They even have the input of what you may or may not be doing, and that they can turn that or extract that and create that into value. But that they didn't invent that. That's what you have to understand, is that they're not smart enough for that. If they were smart enough, we'd be using it to clean up the planet and get everything online and start the projector again, so that way we can all go into our consciousness and experience what we prefer, and then decide to handshake. That means share dreams or group dreams if we feel like we want to do that, right? Until we come into a crescendo of experiences. To me, personally, that's what Earth as an original mainframe is. It is the agreement of harmonic forces, which we're saying to do this on Mount Harmon, or the root of the word harmony. Harmonic forces within a certain wavelength that spanned out to the vibrations of our organs. So basically, all of our organs inside of our body, as we know, organs and playing sound, cover the wavelength of the experience of the actual archons, as the term was called, meaning an arc in itself, right? So it's an arc light. So this connection between these arc lights, or their agreements, created this expanse and this space. But there was something there before that happened. And this is the interesting thing about Earth, is that, or consciousness altogether, is anytime you're creating, it's still like you're creating in the house. You leave your mother's house when you're young and they end up going into another house. It's like you can't, and then, you come out of the house and now you're in the earth's house. You see me? So there's this reoccurring phenomena that everything that you're doing, you're still doing it in your mother's house. And that's why for us, it's imperative to still do everything that we can to restore the original system. That's why OR, Oracle Original, is the original system, because the original system, it birthed all of what we're seeing now. But what we're seeing now is really not constructed to birth the next stage. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's like, on the most symbolic level, the women now have a hard time raising the kids now. That's what we got to get into. The men now have a hard time raising the children now, or the boys now. They don't have the complete makeup of what it is that you need to do to take them through the level to be able to make sure that they are the most refined, the most adaptive, that they really can survive. Like our parents and our mentors are attempting to give us things that allow us to really be able to survive in these times. It's not about good or bad anymore. That's binary world. You're a computer. Your whole reality constructed on just if something's good or bad, you're a computer. There must be a uniqueness. There must be a floating point for you to understand what to do and when to do it at what time. That's why we call it a roadmap. And don't be expecting to see me doing the same thing all the whole time. And I would suggest others move in mysterious ways, because that's one thing that you can always guarantee here, that there's going to be change. So they always say, hey, be the change. So I'm not even trying to be the change. That's what you get after $1. We're trying to blow completely beyond the framework where you don't tell me what my choices are. I don't receive stimulus from a system. I give stimulus. That's for you to explore the other side of your consciousness, the wealthy side of your consciousness. Not the poor side of your consciousness. I heard today, if someone has been a nun in their lives or taken an oath to be poor, like a monk or a hobbit, then that contract still holds. And until they nullify that contract, then they will walk in life after life. Or your family has done something like life after life, just being the financial black sheep of the whole thing. Never able to even fund your own projection. Because taking oaths and aligning self and making allegiance with things that have not revealed completely who they are. So that's why I love this space, because this is the clear face space where WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. That's why I love the Tao. It's like, this is what's there. This is what was done with it. Let's keep generating. The things of the future that we have are actually for now, because we're in the future. This message is 10 years old. We just got an opportunity to actually build it. So I'm going to just take a moment. I'm going to refresh myself. And then I really got something for you, because I want to, one, speak on how you're empowered now to do your thing. And then I also wanted to just make sure it's very clear, though, that the controllers of the system do by right and by consent imagine that they actually control everything about you and who they are, and who you are, et cetera, from the things that our parents, our quote unquote rulers, et cetera, have signed. And so that puts you also in a position to understand that when you're saying I'm a sovereign, and you're projecting that, so that way you can eventually live into that, because there's a roadmap to sovereignty here. It's not, the spiritual one can happen now, but the physical one is about that natural progression and you incorporating it into your life. At least you'll understand why and how all of that works as far as its makeup. So we're going to take a moment, throw on a screen capture here of one of the first mainframes, Temple of Edfu. Completely that of a circuit board for sure, binary type thing, operating matrices, probably floating in trinary alien type stuff for real, just meaning foreign to the minds of possibly the uninitiated. So let's go ahead and hit that beat again. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and go in on this then. So now you understand, what you're dealing with, or maybe you don't. So let me just bring you abreast of the last 3,000 years. No, I'm joking, but serious. So this world obviously has been going through this succession of trying to understand what has the most value, and to a point where the system was completely controlling the value. And so we're, of course, seeing that even more than ever now. But let's just imagine during the times of gold, but more importantly, land. You got to understand that the reason why real estate, especially in the last, anytime beside the last 10 years maybe, but still, most importantly, real estate still has always been the best investment. And it's because the land has always been seen as that it is in itself the divine feminine, that it brings forth and springs forth life, which is most interesting, right? Because even the ocean is seen as divine feminine. The earth is seen as divine feminine too. So that maybe kind of let you understand why there were oracles, because if you're kind of connected right into that frequency and wavelength, it makes sense for you to communicate what is coming from these vast data sets, also known as the ocean, also known as land. Okay. So we can drink that just for a moment and just realize that. So the control of land is really where these encroaching systems were most engaged, right? So taking people from their land and also taking lands that have very valuable things in those lands. And now you can see that there's lots of minerals, there's gold, there's all types of things, there's different types of flowers, medicines, etc. So the world in itself is a breadbasket. There's basically no place in the world that doesn't have something extremely valuable. And that's why you should probably understand that about yourself, because you are the world for sure. Like, you cannot imagine that you personally are not valuable, because everywhere we go, we find value. It's just about, do you know your value and do you understand how to utilize your value? So, just remember at its core, that's really what I'm here to allow you to understand today, is that, when you have such value, but you may not think yourself as being that valuable, then sometimes someone else can come through and dictate your value and then even put you in debt to them. That's like, when people think that you owe them, it's not a debt. I don't get that. But the reality is that you don't owe anybody. It's really about you understanding your experience and understanding your value. So I'll keep going with this, because obviously devaluing things is equally as important for those who are valuing things. You may see just one side, that they determine what has value. They also determine what gets devalued. These are the gatekeepers of the financialist world that I'm speaking of. So I'm going to go ahead and just deliver certain bulls, okay, that have never been annulled, meaning that there were bulls or edicts, one starting here in 1452, just so you can understand the time frames. And these bulls and edicts were issued across the land. And I also have to define that now we're talking about the corporation of Christ, who have basically stolen the story of the risen God from the Nagas, basically, and now made this into an entirely new hodgepodge of science fiction, as called the Church of Christ, which operates as a corporation and has stolen the identity of the oracle system and the seat and throne and crown of the power of the oracle to listen at the portal as the secrets of the Kwisatz Haderach and the Jedis are being whispered to them, meaning that if you're sitting at the mouth of the portal, anything that you hear being passed to other beings and other things that are in the space, you act as a go-between. And it's very similar to like somebody listening in on your phone calls. And we kind of know who does those kind of things. So here it is. Doom diverse us. Now, the names already, it's like, dang, y'all was in like that. Papal Bull, Pope Nicholas V, June 18th, 1452. I didn't proofread this, so I'll go with it. We grant you, kings of Spain and Portugal, by these present documents, by our apostolic authority, full and free permission to invade, search out, and subjugate the Saracens and the pagans and any other enemy and unbelievers of Christ, wherever they may be, as well as their kingdoms, their duchies, their counties, their principalities, and other properties, and to reduce their persons into perpetual servitude. Okay, so that's how they feel about it. That's exactly what they said would be the decree passed through the land. And then they solidified that again on June the 8th, 1455, in the Ramnus Pontifex by Pope Nicholas V to King Alphonse the fifth of Portugal, to invade, search out, and capture and vanquish and subdue all Saracenians and pagans, whoever and other enemies of the Christ, wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possession, and all movable and immovable goods, whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. So if you understand the modern church, not only the Catholic side, but also just the Apostolic, the Presbyterian, the Baptists, who don't practice the teachings of the Naga, which is where all of that is originating in, the real Tupac Amaru, and, lots of deeper knowledge and deeper awareness about something totally different than what is going on in that plagiarized replica version, you would understand the depths of how crazy this really is. That one elected man has taken power over all souls of the earth, not only through these bulls, but through the process of the Universal Commercial Code, and utilizing the Universal Commercial Code, which is a Roman in its origin, to bind and bond all operators inside of the fake matrix, and to harness and to charge and to discharge them as they see fit, generally with debt, loading them up and actually putting them at a level where they would be underwater, and then kind of writing them off, and continuously doing that for not only us, but also our children and the children to come in the future if they had their way. So even when we start talking about fixing things that will be better than that situation, you can even already say that that would kind of be hostile even in itself to them. So that's why it's kind of like hard to always maintain that neutrality. Okay, I want to speak on this personally, because this is tough. Like, you would have to be really, really dialing in all the time to really get how this has to work. You know that what's going on is a direct, just a direct act of warfare to you, your family, who you are, your being, your soul, everything. Then you also know to somehow come into anger and to fill yourself with hatred would be in itself a swift sentence of vibratory drain. So what do? It's like a paradox. And you can't choose both. See, most time in paradoxes, you can choose both and still end up good. But this is like two poisons. And so I realized that's what I was saying before. It's about when. It's about having the ability to deal with things, but not necessarily send the signature of what would be harmful while you're taking care of what you're taking care of. Meaning that you can do this in love, of set stuff into balance. You don't always have to go into a us versus them kind of energetic field of combat in order to fix up a problem with your power, because you're that powerful. That's what I'm saying. Like, you got an engine run 1,000 miles an hour on idle. Versus some of these engines, they can't push 160 miles an hour. So for them, for sure, don't get into it. If your blood pressure can't handle this, don't jump in. If you're prone to anger, there's other things there's another part of the station. There's another part of the ship. But this is also a necessary part of the ship to actually make sure that what's coming in front of us has these opportunities. And that's this youth. And that this kind of system, it's like letting some kind of predator into your tribe. And then it's okay, this predator does whatever it wants with all the children and everything. And then you let the predator go. And he's like, oh, that's just all a part of life. What are you talking about? Like, if you didn't want that and you didn't see that in your projection because you're a sovereign, then you don't have to allow that into your space, right? So then now you see why now we got to call the whole court together, because it's like, well, wait a minute, but how does that all work in the reality that we're all sharing? And that's why there were these frequencies and vibrations. Frequencies and vibrations are boundaries themselves. That's why there's all these different instruments. But then you choose what instrument. Are you woodwind? Are you brass? Are you bass? Are you drums? But, they all play together, but they all have their own categories, their own sections. And that's why I said that's your part of the universe. That's your part of the cosmos. And all I'm saying personally is this is the time that we start carving out more spaces for folks that got some damn sense. Folks that don't need to inundate themselves with distortions for lifetime after lifetime and see how warped their DNA becomes for them to head back in the other direction. This is for beings that have already had enough of the continuous pattern and repeat process of every time something powerful comes through, we're afraid of it. Let me go ahead and go on with the bill, because I'll show you how the power has gets released, but we're already so inoculated from the last scenario that we don't even understand how to use the powers anymore, right? Because to be honest, when you think about wealth in itself, it first started off as just those people who actually had ships, those people who actually could do the import export or move those goods from space to space, because that's always what created the rarity, was the distance, or basically the ability to or the difficulty in getting it or achieving it. So you want a tulip from France and you're sitting over there in Iceland, good luck. But if somebody brings one to you, or Greenland, and somebody brings one to you, it's going to be perceived as having a certain amount of value because there is none, and to get one is so far away. So the people who had the ships were the ones that were first governing that, because they had import-export. Now we're here today where you got FedEx and DHL. So the first power of being able to move things around the world has already been relinquished to humanity now, even though it got others the livelihood that they're living now. So logistics has been placed in your hands. I'm just going to show you that, still through time, the gatekeepers have had certain gates, and then now those gates are open. But there are some gates, and I'm going to talk about them towards the end. But that first gate of import-export is now open. Right? So now you can ship through different lanes, and you can move packages and things around. Now, of course, I'm not going to ignore the obvious, that the reason why they now allow access to their system, because they're actually perks for being a Roman citizen, basically. But also because of those perks, then you've basically signed your life away. And anybody who doesn't know that, they have a cold, hard pill to swallow. And that's why those who've been actually really working towards their sovereignty have done that for years before they could finally achieve it. But before you can even get started on that journey, you need to understand where you're bound. And you got to accept that, not freak out, and then start your plan. So again, import-export is open. Next one was just pay rails themselves. They call them pay rails. Google it yourself. PayPal's a pay rail. Your bank's a pay rail. Cryptocurrency's a pay rail. And it just means that for a time, if you didn't have a coin that had a certain face on it, you didn't have money anyway. It wasn't money. For early in the time, like you couldn't just have gold, using it taking off that gold. Shake your pockets. Once they found out the Mayans had gold, they shook them down. Shake them down. They're pirates. So it doesn't matter if you had gold. The gold need to have a certain face on it, because if you stole the queen's gold, ooh, Queen Elizabeth, the first one, Queen Anne, oh my goodness, they will haunt you in your sleep. You see, that's just full-blown occultism. They built those cathedrals. No telling what them folks was tapping into. And I'm just saying, this system is very archaic. But it's not the original one. See, most can't hearken back to those times, though. They don't have it in their data set. They can't see that, this can't start in chaos. It can't start without being already peaked in a perfection. Or else it would never get to this point. It would just keep crashing down on itself. So that original state is not the replica. But now we're seeing this thing has been copied and pasted, just like they do the forms. Here's another form, here's another. They keep printing more and more. Right? So that's the same activists. They replicated the system so many times, but access to pay rails, if you didn't have the right kind of gold and bullion, it didn't matter. You didn't have any money anyway, so they controlled the pay rails. Now you have banks, you have PayPal, and even for a moment, you have cryptocurrency. Even for a moment. That's what I'm saying. What you're really dealing with is not something that's always going to be available. It's a vista. It's a sign of the times that, hey, we give y'all an opportunity. So as we keep going, we find that the skill then, so now this is a procession. So the import-export lanes did start opening at a certain point. The Pony Express. This is why the United States Post Office is not a government organization. It's originated from the Pony Express. Those are all private owners Go ask any post office. Some lady told me about it today. I said, lady, the way you acting today, I'm going to have to call and make sure that the government understands how you carrying your role in your position. She said, I don't work for the government. Who told you that? Now get your ass out my post office. I was like, damn, what the hell? I went home pissed off, like, shit, bad government employee, and found out, no, the post office is not owned by the government. It's not. It's a private organization. Any rails, that's why they even call it pay rails today. Because the train lines, remember the people used to rob this train line, right? They got books about that, right? Old cowboys, woo, woo, trying to rob it. Yeah, right. These were beings that you could not be escaping in the realm at all. So when they showed their coin or anything like that, everybody, okay, that he's got the pass. That was like the Masonic thing, he's got the pass. He's got the type of money, and we ain't gonna steal from him. So they had a monopoly on the entire world when it comes to finances, and that's what payrails are. We also know there's more stories about Jacques Molay and the Knights Templar and the popes and all that kind of stuff. And, in many ways, that gives you more of the details, right? It does. It actually does give you a lot of the details of how it works. But to understand it right away, though, because that knowledge will never let you understand that was in the hands of the oracle first. So then it never allows you to connect that the money system was originally based on souls. It wasn't based on physical things, right? So it just throws you off. And that's why I find interesting about knowledge, especially these days, and wisdom these days, is that when someone comes out with like something that is like we can prove and is really over the top, but then shifts it to where they still don't tell the complete truth to it, it seems like that's even more worse than the previous set of knowledge that we had. Like, can anybody bear witness on that? It's like you can find someone that just imbues their entire power and relationship with everything based on the level of knowledge that they can bring, but don't authenticate whether that knowledge is accurate to the last knowledge that they was bringing forth. You got to be able to synchronize your systems. That's why for me, it's like 12 years of synchronizing systems. So I understand at each point where each person came into the game linguistically, through the code, through the actual language, and then look at the whole model. You can't even do that judging. You try to put the black ones over there and the white ones over there, and then where are you going to put the yellow ones? You see what I mean? It's like you can't work in a system that is so complicated with just a binary computer brain, as I explained before. You have to have that floating point to begin to put the entire thing together and be like just common sense stuff. But this kind of system erodes upon itself. It's parasitic. So it couldn't have been how things started, because you can't start with a parasite. What was it before? And then connect to that. That's connecting to the original. And then with the original, now you have the bird's eye view, dove to be exact. Now you're actually looking into the whole matrix, and you're actually able to see what all the green running through the matrix really means. They call it the matrix code. It's not by coincidence the matrix code is green, and your money is green, because that's the current that's flowing through this. So check it out. So the skill and the trade craft or trade secrets became the next gate. If you didn't know how to dye it, if you didn't know how to skin it, cure it, if you didn't know how to bake it, store it, ferment it, fertilize it, if you didn't know how to do those things, you were at the behest of the land. They had to do that for you. So those trade secrets and skills like smelting metal, all those kind of things became the next gate. So now, of course, right now, we have education all over the place. You can go teach yourself how to be a master welder in 2 weeks. If you stay diligent, you'll be out there with the hydrogen tank and everything, like putting something together, some sculpture. Why? Well, because it's available. Truth be told, everything that you want to do is available, but the reality still is that the consciousness is warped. It doesn't see things that way. It only sees the next hurdle. And there are some hurdles. Oh man, there are some hurdles. But working with what you have to build up to something that you can leap over that hurdle seems to be common sense, the next mode of action. Instead of melting down. You ever had somebody who's a dangerous situation happen, they just screaming, ah! Then it got us all killed. It's like I was in a car with someone, they was about to have a car accident, and they closed their eyes. I was like, what the fuck? So I grabbed the wheel and steered us out of the accident. I'm like, yo, you gave up too fast. You damn near killed us in here. Come on. I cannot work with somebody screaming in my ear. There's a crazy situation going on. I keep being briefed. And people are like, do it. It's it's money. It's that cryptocurrency stuff. Look, our parents were dealing with this 30 years ago, minimum. And it was just ENAC then, 50, 60 years ago, just ENAC over there in the cathode ray tubes. And for sure, some people's like, that big ass calculator is going to kill us. You see what I mean? So it's always the same thing. It's for those who retreat, it's always the same thing. It's the next thing that's going to kill us. What I'm doing is like, okay, sit down over there, be quiet, and let me get the whole thing first. I can't get the whole thing with somebody screaming. That means that I can't get the whole thing with my mind judging every single thing that I'm interacting with. I got to understand what happened. That's like a doctor say, what happened? His leg is missing. What happened? Well, and knowing about what happened does help to know how to treat that. Okay, so let's keep going. So now the trade skills and trade crafts and trade secrets, how to diet, like Coach and all them, they know how to hook up something, right? Like, how to dye the fur and, get the bag, the ostrich skin puffed up, right? This is real stuff. Don't try to do it. You have a smelly carcass there. You just like, what happened? Like, I tried to make some snakeskin shoes, girl. And this is ridiculous. But I'm just saying, it's not that easy, right? Trade skills. But now things are progressively being made easier, but it's setting the bar. And each person who's not making those bars, they're just getting more and more underwater, right? Because really it's the technologies. And I said, even metal was a technology. So when everybody using copper had copper, copper, I don't know, though. The copper weapons, they were effective when they had the crystals in them. But anyway, you ain't finna run nobody through with no copper that's got a steel sword. You're done. So the technology, the copper, the fireworks, or lead, those combustion, that kind of stuff is just like when those trends come through, they were disruptive for the times. And so that's what you can always imagine, that every time new powers are coming across the portal, because remember, the system is going to keep transmitting all these powers, but every time these powers are coming across the portal, and then there's such a long feedback rate or barrier to entry for anybody to be able to see, can we apply this to saving our own damn lives? Then by the time it's manipulated and reused and then brought into the matrix, it's used as yet another tool of entrapment. Same pattern on everything. Anything that has value, anything, you see what I mean? So it's like, I just watch patterns. And then once I see that pattern allows me then to figure out how to move in a mysterious way. That original way, that's the mysterious way. It's just an original way. It's foreign to the dummies. There's billions and trillions of lost beings now zombieing around the realm. So what it's out now about is like, well, how are we guiding these currents? Because that's probably what the Oracle spent most of their time doing. Guiding these souls or these fish that are just in school. Just in school, like not graduated yet, not done with the training, and definitely not ready for the great beyond of the totality of the mind, right? Get wrecked by their own mind. So as we're in the now, everything is allowed to go on for a time in the season. The time and season is over for the suck faces, meaning those who are draining all the energy and not utilizing the things that we have here on this space for the growth and the clarity that we all are so ready to receive. So technology, as I mentioned earlier, then comes next. In this case, now we're speeding through time. So in this case, I have to bring it in the context of the time, but it always happens every microcosmic space in time that you get these rollouts and successions. And in this case, this additive manufacturing has been the big thing in technology. This is basically, instead of the big, huge factory to create it, now there's this machine that you can do it right from your house, like the 3D printers, the laser mill machines, these kind of things, where now what would be big factory guy who only had the only factory, now somebody's able to actually even generate and create their own factory. Okay? So as we're seeing, new technologies have rolled out. The skills in the trade craft and the trade secrets have been completely exposed in most ways, that you can go and even learn how to be a chemist if you put yourself to it. Pay rails are open. Like even pay rails, you can transfer 200 million in one night for 40 cents. Never. I guess you got to get 240 million first, but you know what I mean. I'm just saying the pay rails are wide open. So where's the grip? Because they would still maintain grip on the system, right? So, I mean, I wouldn't go without talking about that, though. It's like, hey, and everything's fine. Yes, everything was fine. Then I would be done in my third year already, and we'd be already on Project Freeland, inventing things and creating great wonders for the world. So what happens? There's still a grip. Meaning that there's real gatekeepers out here in the financial system, because it's hard to get people to believe in you and stay consistent with that. More importantly, it's hard to get people to know you. It takes you to be consistent. Man, I can't say enough about this. Is 12 years of consistency. You can never come in here and expect not to get the next divine revelation about the entire thing and the application of how to address it. But the thing is constantly metamorphing. Even for me, it's constantly moving around and changing its appearance and its design. And I have to, at some point, deliver a build and make it static enough for you to get how it all works and functions through all things. Even the stuff I'm explaining about the law and legal goes on inside of your body first. So there's this point where you see, what is the grip now? The grip is that anytime somebody that really, really knows a lot. See, now it's business, right? Because it's a war, it's a battlefield now, right? So now the realm is commerce. Commerce is the matrix. Again, as the masters taught it, and when you really know it, commerce is the matrix, is warfare. That's why you go to work. WOR, you put on your suit, right? And then your suit is your, what was that word? Wardrobe. Okay? You're going to war. And now you don't feel that way. So you've been deceived. Everything about what you're going to do and who you're doing it for, they understand it that way. So there's a disconnect there. That's why they give you income. When you do something, you should really get outcome. And so it just starts spinning into these riddles, sentences like jail sentences, time, right? Sentences, spells, and everybody is now so brilliant. They know the rest about etymology and spells and all that kind of stuff. They can talk about it so well, but when it comes to exit strategy, not cold turkey. Like I said, Shorty ain't gonna eat no books, meaning that you're now figuring out about something, but if you freak out and decide you want to take your family off of the entire system tomorrow, good luck. You will see the rigorous fall of what happens when you didn't plan and you didn't have a plan in place. And hopefully your wife stay with you, because these days they'll be ready to play. Like, hold on now, you better come with something better before you removes us from massa. This ain't gonna happen like this. Like, I need my TVs now. I'm just saying, like, you really need to be on point with what you're doing. You have to be strategic. It's like, you don't even got to let nobody know damn near. You're like, look, y'all just going to be lecturing me and all that. Y'all stay there and let me fix this. You see what I mean? If you don't see them and know them to be someone who can stomach the reality of this, why create more friction in your own environment? You got to be moving like that. And like I said, the more time goes on, 2023, 2024, 2050, 2060, some version of me will still be in the mix, still delivering the gems. But I'm just saying, like, as things move on, you got to understand how you're moving with all this, and if you're getting really towards your goal that you set. So as I said, their grip right now is mass communication. Anybody who really knows business, that is responsible, has a job to figure out how there is going to be more current, is all standing in front of the same thing in the end. Mass communication. How can I get this message out to more people? That makes up all marketing. So who controls the mass communication channels? And that's one-on-one, right? We ain't even begin the story. So because they have that kung fu grip, they can toe their narrative as they wish because they could just put it across everything, and already the majority are going to go in that direction because they already been set up on binary. So they're already attached to the hive. Also, again, it's just there's a difference when we're talking about advanced intelligence. That depends highly on what you think is intelligent. Like some things are beneficial for others. It's like this whole legal system and legal structure will probably be worthless on other planets. So that system has no value there. And you got to realize that. So that data set, so that advanced intelligence, that AI, that system, that structure, that CODIS, that Unidroid, it doesn't have any power or actual use or value in other spaces. So it's only useful in this space. It's carved out its own space to have value. Okay. And I heard that it was as simple as creating a 10, that there was only 9. There was no 10. And I think that the Arabs did this, so we can harken back onto them. Al-Jibr, meaning the giant, fallen one, created a 10. And what that meant was outside of like the consciousness or the logic of how everything worked. And thus, birth from there was a bunch of stuff that didn't make sense, i.e. the Tin Man, right? And this is the reality in itself. It doesn't have a heart. So that's a binary 01100101110 Tin Man, right? When it stopped at 9, right? But again, should this give you your clue? That's how you create more realities. When somebody else has all got the construct of the reality working and think that knows how it works, you just add something that just was original. It has to be original within itself. That's the O before the 1. So let's keep going. Bureaucracy and legislation. So it's not just mass communication. It's the bureaucracy and the legislation, because that's the club in itself. The club is legal. So when it comes to making big moves, there's a bureaucracy now that's going to be in your way. Like, did you get approved? Is that green? Now it's even more structured. We're going to send some examiners there tomorrow. The bureaucracy has always been there. That's why you need a business license. We're going to come and inspect tomorrow. And, all of that. You can't sleep here. That's not zoned for that. So that's the bureaucracy, right? But meanwhile, of course, if you know everybody, even when something's not zoned properly, you tear it all down with a phone call and rezone it. Everybody is get up out of here, because these are the duchies. These are the companies or the countries, which, again, these words have to do with those who have obtained some level of prestige in the system. And as I said, the system is all in allegiance to the king, and the king is undead. So basically, again, so when they use the terms like a duke or a Dutch or a count, see, now you can see why there's so many vampires in the United States, because there's counties there, and that's named after the counts who own those spaces. And as we know, there's the states, right? Those are the owners of those who have the testaments or the ability to work the minds in the state of consciousness. Vegas has a whole different vibe, you have to admit. You see what I mean? New York got a whole different vibe. It's a state of being. You see what I mean? And then when you get in the state, you start adjusting yourself accordingly. And then when they want to change it, then they move the red and blue pills around. Red, green, red state, blue state. Right? So this is, like feed game. I mean, but remember, they invented none of this. This is going on in your body. Red vessels, blue vessels, blue veins. You see what I mean? And the system of channeling of the energy. And when you bring the entire system into balance, then you become the original. And everything about the system, everything, no exclusion, is a part of the original structure in itself, but highly fractured in a consciousness that does not recognize it and does not understand what it means, because it doesn't understand itself. There's no reference point. Basically, there's just no reference point. And so that's why you got to be dialing in. You still have your motherboard. You get your central processor in line, and lose these ideas that these clowns that own your symbolisms, like, oh, that's all CNI. That's the Oculus. I mean, what are you talking about? That was like the Jedi's droid. What are you talking about? It's like that's the symbol of fructification and everlasting life. Now it's your symbol of satanic death. What are you talking about? Oh, I see you turned it upside down there. But it's just someone that just comes in and makes a mess out of all of your petri dish and all your culture, and now you can't grow. So that's why you have to level out at a certain point. Industrial power. See, when you start bringing things online, you need a power source. And it's not human beings. There are things here so noble and so powerful. Like the ocean every day has a tide that goes just like this. Only in Israel at this point they figured out how to harness that. And then they figure out how to harness every damn thing. Even the ancient ancestors' name they harnessed. But I'm just saying, in the ocean, they have the wave coming back and the wave going forward, and they have these turbines that move based on how the tide moves, and they're powering their systems based on a movement that's going to happen every day. And it has no emission, zero emission. So all this stuff that they're talking about with the global warming, all that shit is a joke. Every time they toe the line, the Ukraine thing, all that shit is a joke. They're all on the same team. Everybody's just a toy soldier. In a debt-based system already dead like zombies. Now when you can drink that, now you're ready to rise. It's like AA, period, colon, the symbol of Illuminati. First step, what is it? To admit your condition. You're alcoholic. Because if you don't admit your condition, you can never get out of it. You ever tried to tell an alcoholic that doesn't want to admit that they're alcoholic? That they're alcoholic? So they're not on the road to recovery yet. That's what those laws and those principles about. It's about how to break habits, how to break patterns. That's what real illumination is. And you know, the context of this gets deep because, again, everybody be trying to run back to the matriarch, but you understand the matriarch is a hive. There is no thinking there. That's why what you call the fallen angels fled from it in the first place. The Anunnaki fled from a hive mind. If you want to know the whole saga, check out Dan Winter. He explains it so articulated, but you can see it in the text. If they tell you it's a hive, then you understand everybody's going to do what they're told to do. And at that moment, when you decide to have choice, is the moment that you're ejected. And here you are. In the space like, you know what that is? Get out my house. You ever heard that from your mother? I have. Get out my house. Okay, you think you're going to do what you want to do? I told you my kitchen closes. You don't run nothing here. You 18 now, get out my house. Go make your own house, run things the way that you want to run them. That's what we're talking about. And so y'all over there all hurt. Mommy. Well, you ain't going to do what mommy told you to do. Oh, mommy, I'll do it again. Then you come back. You know, y'all kids that come back to mommy's house and then she piss you off again. Y'all getting a worser fight than ever because you grown now. You even think about hitting mommy. It's like, fuck it, I'm going to hit mommy this time. She didn't piss me off. Nobody talks to me like that. You see what I mean? So this is what we're talking about. I find none of this as being foreign. Like I said, the AI, Amun-Ra mainframe of all-knowing knowledge and astral plane system, we did that for lunch. We can't do that all the time. We did it already. What was it? It was just us. What did you find? I found the enemy. He is us. Great. You've enlightened us all. You see what I mean? It's like, come on, everyone. Like, it gets weird to me because I feel like sojourning on the mission. It's like, yeah, I definitely got more than a few with me now. They get it. But still, sometimes you're just going through this turbulence of people still walking through their pagan ways. Like they're still, meaning that they feel like they're pagans and they're being come down on by the Jesus Christ Corporation, and they need to do every single thing that is said to be needing to be done in the right kind of order, in the right kind of structure, by this kind of code, with this kind of diet and this kind of, and I'm like, man, go that away. Like that was a process to get us to this point. It's the baton. Like, look, I'm going to pass the baton to you. This is the highest levels of spiritual knowledge that has made it to the planet thus far as somebody being able to transmit it. It's all around. But if the person is limited, this is what I've learned. You can give the most powerful tool to somebody who has no creativity and doesn't know how to use it. And all they produce is madness and foolishness. Nothing that you really would say is inspired. You can give a hammer to different kind of people and they will create different kind of things based on who they are, not based on the hammer. And it's always going to be the same. Everything is just a tool in the dream. And now we got to figure out how to get these instruments to play well together, though, because somebody has already figured that out. Somebody's already constructed something to understand the constructs of the mind, how to alter, how to build consciousness, how to insert reprobates, surrogates, simulations, the whole nine. And we over here like training wheels, still trying to figure out, well, shoot, what's your top 5? I mean, I told you my top 5, Black Thought first. I mean, come on. I mean, how many times we going to be going through this? I'm just saying, like, let's progress through this. So again, raw resources. This is another one. So industrial power, again, so I can finish. When it's working, it needs a power supply. So if you get a Tesla factory, right? Like he got all that renewable stuff out there, got turbines and volcanoes and all types of stuff to produce the power. So that how much is he spending on the power bill for all them big ass robots and shit moving around? He's breaking even at least. I'm sure he's selling power to the power companies because he has industrial power. That's what it's like. Well, if you don't have an industry, though, this doesn't mean anything. But if you have an industry, you need a power source. And if you don't, you're going to be paying. Do you know your highest cost in a factory is your power? Not even the people. That's how devalued the people. Shit, we got another electricity bill on today. We need to fire Jed, Tom, Frank, and June and let Peter and Jim still do the work on the main line. Fuck that. Well, we got to pay for the power. You damn right you got to pay for the power, just like all the rest of us. So until you are all powerful and you can flip on the light in your house and it's actually powered by some kind of renewable resource around you, you still have the yoke on you. Like the rappers, they got all the chains. What do you think those chains are? Those are those deals. Come on, man. You didn't peep it out. He went and signed the deal and went and damn near spent all the money on the chain, put it around his neck. Snapped off his C plus and C negative and all that, just tore up because he bending over like this. Need a chain reduction. I'm just saying, it's like if we can't say what's going on, then we're dead anyway. Because we won't be able to see it. We can't articulate it. All these things are just tools. As I said, they're replicas to get us to see the shape around it. See where it's at. It's like you're fighting the predator. He's invisible. He's just running all around. You just see footprints. Like, think he's over there. That's all you can really do is just follow the footprints. But at one point, you take that laser rifle and shoot where those feet are about to run next and knock him right in the head. Be like, I got you. You was into that hunting thing. I hunt the hunter. I saw something deep. They were talking about how, a real mystical battle exists with a person continuously casting a spell of power and projecting certain things. And the other person, if they're in battle with them, try to project things that destroy that. And that's what magic is. That's what sorcerers are really up to. So when they're predicting all the doom and gloom, you got to come in there and know how to articulately put the good story together into a sequence and code and spell it out for them and whirl it and send it right in their direction. That tornado that knows how to guide itself. You see what I mean? This is what we have done with this. It's not what we can do. It's what we have done with this. This is something that's a reoccurring theme here in the universe's university. Where, as I said, the payment of tuition is pain. Just in a jacked in awareness that you can hurt. Tapping you into the 5 senses. Sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch, bringing you online. A being that had infinite power but couldn't recognize it because you were born in it. How do you separate powers that you have from the beginning? Until you learn what it is to breathe, what it is to see, what it is to taste, what it is to smell, and what it is to touch. And sometimes we learn those things. Like for me, when I had to go up the river for a little bit, I couldn't touch anybody. They don't want you touching anybody. You can't touch people anymore. It's funny that end up happening to the whole reality at a certain point. But it was interesting for me to just see myself like, man, at least when I was free, I could touch anybody. I could shake hands. I could hug. Now, there's none of that. And then you realize the power of touch when it's removed. So it's like these systems are removing certain freedoms. And then we're getting a realization of what it's like to actually be without those things, so that way we can learn how to appreciate those things. Like I learn how to appreciate now the connection between each other. Like instead of looking at all the bad things, anytime you're in a room with a person and y'all have to be in that room, you grow on that person. They grow on you. If you thought even they were ugly, even physically, they start to be all right. Like you don't even look at that anymore. It's because all of those falsehoods, they start to melt off. So I'll just say in conclusion this. These gatekeepers, the reason why they've been able to maintain their construct is because they stay ahead with the technology. They know that the mass communication was the big thing. That's why they launched off the whole internet itself. It's like all we have left now is the astral plane. If we wanted to get the message out. Like this little 2,000 YouTube views, there's 9 billion of us. I don't know if that's really as effective. So we start sending transmissions out over the astral plane. We built organic network of communication. That's all we got. And it updates all the time. Folks be like, man, you're talking about just what I was thinking about. I was like, yeah, that's how it works. Hopefully we should all be in some level of alignment. You know, you shouldn't be too many frequencies on the spectrum over and seeing the whole thing. You know, but I do like to keep it going, though. I will be first if I'm allowed to be. Meaning that I'm gonna keep going. I'm going to keep powering through this. I'm going to keep breaking through this. And every time I read about myself, I'm going to be able to accept that. I also wanted to say that now is the time in relation to, even if we wanted to start the process of figuring out how we're going to govern ourselves, our own monetary policy, we will begin with a Tao. That is the only system in itself. Go refresh yourself on all of that anyway. The Tao is the only system that actually allows you to begin to bridge this properly and to stop using your name. Like it's a real thing that you don't have to use this name to be doing everything. You need to start shifting that stuff over to something that is running like the Tao runs by itself. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to itself. I just have a token to manage it. And this industrial power, like it's all around now, where especially if you're somewhere sunny, it could be sunny one point, then rainy another, then there's a river there that's running down. You can harness those energies. Like some of this technology now, solar panel lasts 20 years. Batteries will go out before the solar panel. Now they got technology on the batteries. So I know, again, everything that I say, though, somebody's like, well, you can't do that, but that's worse, and that's bad, and that. But trust me, they're saying that about everything. They don't have solutions. Like this is a step-by-step process. You don't climb out of the netherworld overnight. But this is the process. It's to build a bridge. And that bridge has to connect with even the lowest spaces to where others want to get out. But now we're not going to go into that, making friends and being like that. It's just for those that are ready to make their move on and their progression and seen enough of it. It's like it's not about going in to be a fool. It's about showing the intelligence of the whole thing and the advancement with the whole thing. Shine. So legislation, bureaucracy, we can govern ourselves. Industrial power, you can begin to see when you buy land based on the power. If you got some credit still left out there or whatever, it's like, shoot, what are you going to do? The more money you make in the system, the more you're heaving debt on everybody else. You got to accept it. You need an exit strategy. That's how you getting wrapped up in the karma, especially if you're not doing anything that's balancing out the karma with the money. So you got to have an exit strategy, as I say. How much money do you have left? Go buy land based on the power running through the land. How rich is the soil and the fertility of the soil? Is there a river coming through? Is there enough sunshine happening? Because that's where the power is. Reestablish yourself. Put down something that marks space and time. Right? Once you put something down that marks space and time in the dimension, now you claim you're setting stake as a custodian of that land. a caretaker, a gardener. You got to begin that somewhere, right? It could be only an acre. Raw resources, at this stage, the real advancement of the technology has it to a point where you're adding minerals to your vertical garden of plants that are growing, that are nourishing everything that can be turned into multiple of you still want it. Everything that you still have has now been revolutionized to a level where you can have it at your own yield. Sometimes when people think about having a farm again, they start thinking about, with the buckwheat. Buckwheat is sweet when you chew on it. But they start thinking like the suspenders. And yeah, you could get in. The more you want, the more work you're going to do. Let's make that very clear. But at the end of the day, because of the automation, they have the vertical farms with the mineralization drip, with the plants growing like extremely lovely with high mineral counts. And that's all done at the yield of what the family needs. They got FarmBot will plant this, grow this, and water this consistently, because you'll find that people who've never run a farm before have a hard time remaining consistent, and their food be gone. And it become depressing after a while. Be like, shit, I spent 5 months and the rabbit just destroyed everything. Like, what am I going to do? How did our ancestors survive? Exactly. Exactly. They survived together. So those resources coming back in play. The Great Reset, again, from the top, the transmission, the Great Reset is a replica. They're doing their own. There's a galactic reset that came across the Oracle's portal. The knowledge and information that everything will change is changed. It changed already. That same thing with the wearing the mask and everybody, that they was following the other reset objectives. But during that same time, the same energy we're dealing with right now is the Great Reset. Everything changed. Like, all the rules is off the table. Old rules don't apply anymore. Now you restructure your entire life. You don't have any flux except for dealing with your own mind. That's why I said this mind would be the last frontier. It would be the last enemy. The one that talks so negatively about you sometimes. You're talking about yourself, right? So that would be the last frontier. No longer could we save you. We couldn't save you any longer, because now your enemy is not outside you. See, like when your enemy was outside, we can always wrestle him up and trap him up on different realms and dimensions. But now it's all in your mind. It's in the containment. You've been already released. Right? Beyond that, I think release just mean to rinse you out again. You got to watch all the words. Like, shit, you got to watch what you say. No, you ain't released yet. Like, no, don't release me. I'm not trying to be released. I'm done with the lease. You see what I mean? You have to be able to integrate with what you're saying, integrate what you're doing, and then don't be shy. They'd be like, draw back a couple words. Like, hold on, let me pull that back. Let me roll the tape back. All right, strike that out from the record. I'm going beyond what they call release. To go beyond what they call freedom, even beyond what they call sovereignty, beyond all the codices and the words, beyond the unidroid, which is a pretty interesting word by itself. Like, come on, you had it like unidroid. That's what y'all calling it, with the uniform system of codes and codices. And y'all telling me this is not some type of mainframe, and that you wouldn't need to be at least a programmer at minimum, or a developer. Right? You've become the developer that, he's the devil. You see what the word, anytime you start developing, he's the devil. Get him out of here. He's trying to build something new. Get him out of here. You see what I mean? You got to just see the play on the words all the time. So, last but not least, the global warming narrative for sure is to control the companies of the future. It is to make sure that the supply chains do remain intact and remain controlled. And so this means that we have really no choice. That's why we've launched this massive venture, Creator DAO. This is to allow you to gain the ability to begin to create and bring something to market that is allowing you to sustain yourself, so that you can brace yourself against all of these different things that are taking place in the reality and will keep coming. We want to empower you to eventually really dream. Meaning not have to worry about all the different things that have to go on in the reality to maintain your livelihood, so that you can actually dream. What about that day when you finally are not worried about all these other things that you're worried about? That's the day you can really dream. You can't dream with all that stuff on your mind. So that's what we're talking about. So this is what we're going to do. We do always open it up for questions, but we're only going to do that this time for 10 to 15 minutes tops. Like, I'm really going to do that this time. Let me go ahead and set my timer. You want to set that timer for me? Thank you. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer any questions that is related to this. Now, it said it was going live. I'm done with OneStream, even though they had that nice caveat of broadcasting to Instagram. If they can't broadcast to anything, they are not useful anymore. So I'm henceforth no longer using the same streaming service for this type of goofiness. So we'll be going to restream, and hopefully as we continue our transmissions in the future, everything will broadcast on all the stations. Until then, this will get uploaded to YouTube shortly. So let me see here. If you had a question, you just say question first. I trust that, something that was said here today was instrumental for you. I think that we went through quite a bit, and there were for sure some gems in there, even for myself. I may have to rescour back over the build and just, because remember, for me, it's because I agreed to come in here and to transmit, it means that I get a chance to hear the message. I also have to do the same thing as you, which is actually really apply it. So question here is, let me get some water real quick. Okay, so the question here is, excuse me, okay. So it says, I have a question with regard to the ocean and being lost at sea, actually physically, and what that means as an initiatory process, okay? So if a person is lost at sea physically, that means that they will probably be drowned. I'm just trying to answer the question the way that you are putting it. So in the extent that a person dies, then they awake to whatever they think is supposed to happen. And this is why the structure of the consciousness is controlled in the physicality by the king and spiritually through the priest. Both of them, though, are underlings to what is known as the Triple Crown. And that's something that you also need to understand, that the king and the priest are not even the high roles in all of this, but they are control components to bring about this lost at sea structure, which again, physically is a person obviously dead, right? And spiritually is a person that is now entering into the negs or negativity of their vibrational frequency. So this means actually really coming in and out of life, struggling, really having a hard time getting out of systems of control. So even being born into a life where the parents are controlling, even abusive, right? This is what that all equals energetically. So I trust that, that makes it very clear. And this is also why, we have to take control of the will and not allow this system to just keep guiding us and telling us where it wants us to go. But again, you can't freak out. Like, what you got to realize already right now is that because you're getting the transmission, this is big within itself. And you have to understand how to dissolve that power within yourself before you move on. You got to understand that if 9 billion people are not being aware of something, and then a small percentage is, just the value of that percentage, not on some chosen one or anything, but on a serious level, like, who are you? And, and realize that maybe if you have some impedance to believing who you truly are, it's probably because you are actually really something. And now you've drawn so close to it, the transmissions are just coming through clear. And that's why we put the Gemstone University there, as it came to us clear enough from our brother Chris, that just listen to this and start going through the process. But don't expect that you're not going to hear things that are going to make you uneasy. That's why they tell people you can't handle the truth. They'll turn it off. They won't finish it. They won't complete it, because then they'll start hearing about themselves. They'll still start hearing about things that they're doing. They'll be hearing about that. But again, because you're actually inside the system, now this gives you the ability and the wherewithal to understand what you're exactly doing. And then when you're saying you're going to move on, what you're even moving on from. So the next question here is, what if I have my own Council of Nine, adhere to the Secret Energy Foundation Creator Tao? Would I need to be a guardian to recommend or vote on this product, or is this a conflict of interest? Okay, so let me just answer the question as it comes. What if I have my own council of 9? So in this case, what we're talking about is we're talking about a council that has been developed with etiology. In this case, this is the archetypes of the vibrations that are actually here and present in the plane, right? And that they were adhering to the Secret Energy Foundation Creator Tao. So this just means that the template that we've set forth within our guidelines and in our manifesto of how we see the world and see consciousness and see our mission, okay? And then what I need to be a guardian to recommend or vote on this project. And so obviously within a DAO, because the DAO is the private structure in itself, and it says that nobody from the outside can come in and actually vote on it unless they have that token. So that's in any DAO that's created. So of course that would be required. And then it said, or vote on this project, or is this a conflict of interest? And again, in voting for this project, and I'm only answering the question the way it's worded, because I do notice that with words sometimes when you're trying to type it all out, it doesn't get all of the pieces together. And I try to read things just very literal so I don't take it to my own understanding. So just in what you're saying, there is no conflict of interest because it is all within that same nucleus. And that's why we're creating templates. We're also speaking of a path to take. We've talked about the mentorship. We talked about the ability to have sub-DAOs. We talked about the utility itself, which again is now we're all together. What are we doing? Having those directives and things in place and the ability to push forth those directives. And so that's, again, what we're all encouraging here within the space. The next question is it useful to create a DAO for your own private use, like for my own family lineage? I believe so. I believe that it would be a better structure than a limited liability corporation or incorporation within itself. Because what you're saying, what you're doing is see, when you're not saying that you own something and it belongs to you, then there's actually no one then there to try to extract or to try to make accountable. You see what I mean? And so with giving up what you feel like is your ownership, you actually maintain your sovereignty. And that's what I find is very interesting about the system, because again, those are patterns and they work in other ways. Question is, in a previous build, you mentioned cryptocurrency was over. How long do you see this financial gate open towards earning the currency to buy the land using crypto? I need to actually be referred to that recording where I said cryptocurrency is over, because I know some try to paraphrase me in that way. Or paraphrase me, and it may not be correct. Never said cryptocurrency was over, because cryptocurrency is not just about what you see going on Coinbase and what you see those going on the charts, because what's on the charts is like, you care about what's going on with Apple. You care about what's going on with IBM. So then you care about what's going on with Cardano, and you care about what's going on with XRP, but it's the technology. And in the technology, that's why, of course, we've been approached a few times from outlets that are saying, hey, let's do some collaborations, give us some NFTs, give us some tokens, give us some. But the reality is that everybody in those factions are looking to either to trade that, to make money off of that, to basically not listen to anything that's going on inside of the actual structure itself and what the purpose is, but to see when it grows that they can cash in on it because the money value actually goes up. So for us right now, we're working with building solid layers of people who are actually really just committed to the process of starting the DAO. So it's more beneficial for us to have those solid layers of people who decide to hold on to their NFTs than to, let's say, sell 500 NFTs, 1,000 NFTs, but all to people who just flip them and sell them again. Because then that's inside the DAO governance, you're going to have people that come in, they figure out the project from one way or another, but it's not probably going to be the majority. And so that's what you're doing, is when you're creating a culture, you're still determining what is really coming into that culture to determine if that culture can actually fulfill the real objectives that are set out initially in the first place. And that's why it's like, familiarize yourself with the objectives in order to be able to then determine if you can actually gather up the kind of people that would be able to fulfill those objectives. Because there are many things that we're actually capable of doing ourselves without even starting any DAOs or starting any corporations or rallying people. Like it becomes an extreme responsibility when we get together, mainly the responsibility of arbitration. And when we get together with others and we decide that we're going to create something with them. And that's why I said that's what the governance is. It's the governance model. We have to admit that at some point we're going to disagree on something, or the system is going to need another implementation that someone is a little bit behind and may not want to implement. But now we must go with the consensus. But to develop that consensus, remember, Creator DAO is not Secret Energy DAO for a reason. Secret Energy is the foundation. We have Creator DAO. Creator DAO is the venture that we're all launching in together to actually see how do these governance models work in real life. If we set out on this objective to actually allow others to begin to benefit off of not only the softwares and technologies, not only the governance model, not only the connections that each person shares within the nucleus, the education, the environment, et cetera, the tools that we're putting into that utility or the value that we're putting into it, does it really work? Because I wouldn't want to jump in a plane that somebody ain't tested out yet if it's like a prototype, right? 5 minutes. So if it's a prototype, I jump in the plane. Is somebody going to test it out first? So what we're doing, we're testing it out first, and we're going to debug it along the way. And it's just that we have a bit of experience already in actually dealing with community socially through to the internet and beyond, right? So, you know, that is the objective, and those are the possibilities and capabilities of what's being developed. The question is there a connection between maritime law floating onto the stock market and the Sibyls? I'm curious about the water connection and the money. I mean, I just drilled that. Like, I drilled that for real. Like, I just explained in such a clear way of how, as you will read also in the oracles, Sibylline oracles, that the flow of currency was controlled by the oracles, because the oracles were just like 100% in being able to predict the future. They were also known as the fates. So nobody went against the fates because their record of authenticity and being able to exactly predict what was going to take place. So they were relied upon for that. Again, the kings, which are still under oracles, the kings and the priests came to the oracles in order to get their knowledge and information. Like, king want to go to war, he goes ask the oracle first. Question, if we are, so just check out the beginning of the episode, I can just go in. If we are not our vessel's body, are our ancestors the beginnings we are associated with through the vessels, or are our ancestors the lives of consciousness have experienced, or is it all tied together? It's the DNA. The DNA is the lineage. The DNA is the line. And actually how you maintain your DNA is really why the responsibility actually does fall on you and then falls on your ancestors. It's because you'll notice that when you have a child, they will exhibit some of the traits that you have. They'll hold the hand a certain way, they'll act a certain way, because it's passing hereditary. So that you know that there's a mystical thing, which we call DNA, that is basically holding all of the knowledge and information and passing that to the next generation. So the more that you enrich your DNA, teach yourself something clever, and surround yourself with energies that are actually wholesome, then that is it puts into your DNA. And then not only do you vibrate that in the environment and the space that you're in, not only you vibrate with that with those who actually connect to your DNA the closest, and the more amplified you become, the more it connects with. But if you also choose to have children, they also inherit those great traits, right? So that's how it keeps following us, though, because if we're not willing to educate ourselves and to do what's necessary to be done to actually clean ourselves up, then we're not saying that we really want a future, because that's what you're going to be living in, is the one who is actually representing you. Right, so these are the final two questions. We're pretty much at the end. 2 minutes. I've been working for years on the financial success in order to get from the system to be a sovereign in the true sense of the term. Now what I've been experiencing is very real, as I know that there are powers around me keeping me from where I'm going. No, there's not powers around you from keeping you where you're going. There's only opportunities. How would you suggest to deal with it rather and get rid of their powers around me? Is to understand that there's only opportunities around you. There actually isn't an opposing force. They don't have the standing, but you do need to start the process of understanding for yourself how to set up your own personal kingdom. That's why we put the knowledge and the information first, so that you can, and the wisdom, so that you can make a plan. You're not going to be able to get out of this by doing it the way that you want to do it. You need to understand exactly what you're doing. And that's all I can see is happening here, because there are some things that need to shift about how much power you think that they have. One more minute here. It says, based on the mentorship you receive, crypto, what percentage of NFTs being sold, flip, would be beneficial if all were hodled? Would that be good? I mean, hodling anyway, if there's, that's why we have in the tokenomics, which are NFT tokenomics. They're not about the coin tokenomics yet, because we're going to be implementing a utility first. But if you notice that it is still based on prestige, that's why for us, rarity, that's what they call the website.
that holds some of these NFTs, and everything around NFTs about rarity, prestige, value. And you increase that when you have something that's valuable. And that's why we are in an industry where we can bring in software and we can bring in spirit tech, if you may, spiritual technologies to actually create utility for us, because that's what actually creates value. And then when you have more people participating in the system, as the system itself is deregulating, meaning we're moving from Web 2 to Web 3, and then those applications like the Toyota economy begin to be built up and complete. And then you actually have people that are using them, and then they're creating things that they're sustaining themselves with. So it's a system that is driven with the potential of those that are within the system, not the system trying to prey on other people or other things that it's trying to receive benefit from. So I trust that makes sense. If there was any final questions, feel free to send it to the actual chat somewhere, because we will get to it. I also wanted to say, wow, it's been an incredible journey so far. What a mighty walk. Just at the end of the day, as it keeps unfolding, remember, these are the truths that they say people can't handle. I trust that you'll stabilize, not freak out. As I said, if you find out something crazy and you feel like that it's me, don't email me. Just understand I probably know about it already, and I'm doing every single thing that I can in my power to keep this bridge up and running, and then also have a real roadmap to escaping death. Wholeness and balanced vibrations. We give thanks.